Sometimes I think Chris was probably hitchhiking, probably looking to get away somewhere, and he just probably stopped for her.
She's by herself. She could have met him at a gas station while he's filling up. Can you give me a lift? But somewhere along the lines, I think he was giving her a ride someplace. I don't think she had any indication what was about to happen to her.
Chris was very trusting, so, you know, that was her downfall. My sister Christine was born Christine Ruth Thornton, but we always called her Chris. She was 11 years older than me. Chris was tall. She was 5'10", dark hair, dark eyes, just, you know, a beautiful person inside and out. In the summer of '77, Chris was just 27 years old. Chris was in San Antonio. She was pregnant at the time.
Christine was a free spirit. She kind of went where the wind blew her.
She met up with her boyfriend and, you know, had this crazy idea of going to Montana to pan for gold.
And my understanding is that they were in southwest Wyoming and had an argument ensued between the two of them, and he left her pregnant and alone, and I believe that's the last time anybody had ever seen her.
In the summer of '78, I decided to go down to San Antonio and do some investigating of my own. I actually tried to find her boyfriend, but did not have a good address for him. The San Antonio police refused to take a missing persons report on Chris because she was an adult.
I believe throughout all the years that Christine was missing, I think Kathy was always looking for a way to open up that door of where she is. In '82, this herder out in the middle of nowhere comes across a pile of bones, obviously human remains.
What they found was it was a body of a 25 to 35-year-old female. Along with her bones were also bones of an infant.
There wasn't any identification, and so we remained cold for many years.
And investigators never imagined that those bones would lead them to a notorious serial killer, a man I would later be called upon to prosecute. And this photograph, discovered by police, would lead a heartbroken family to their loved one, missing for almost 40 years. Her smile shared by a tragic list of young women and girls who trusted a charming stranger, only to discover a dark secret that began back in the fall of 1968.
So '68 was tumultuous. It was sort of flower power, free living. It was quite a era and quite a year.
Martin Luther King, Robert F. Kennedy have been assassinated. Andy Warhol was shot that year. And there have been urban uprisings throughout the '60s.
Being a police officer in Los Angeles or anywhere in the country for that matter at that time, everything was anti-war, anti-establishment.
And it's commented on by some of the leading vocalists of the day. You had Barry McGuire in 1965 doing Eve of Destruction.
Eastern world, it is exploding.
You had Bob Dylan, of course, doing Hard Rain's Gonna Fall.
Hard rain's gonna fall.
So what we're seeing is the influence of the new freedoms represented by the counterculture be appropriated by mainstream culture. And that includes daytime television. That even includes game shows like The Dating Game.
The Dating Game began with Chuck Barris back in, I believe it was 1965. He had dealings with ABC, and he just came up with the idea, and he pitched it to a couple of people. It caught on right away.
Celebrating love and romance, and unknowingly feature a remorseless killer.
Thank you, and welcome once again to The Dating Game.
And from the mid-60s onward, Southern California is a mecca for anyone looking to reinvent him or herself and have a fantastic time. They're all partying at some of the hotels on the Strip, like the Chateau Marmont.
Tali Shapiro was an 8-year-old little girl who lived at Chateau Marmont, which is a famous hotel in California.
Her father was a music industry executive. She had a mother and a sister and a brother. And they were living there because their house had gone on fire. And they were staying there temporarily. And a car pulls up alongside of her.
And it's this man who says, oh, it's okay, I'm not a stranger. I know your parents. I'm friends with your parents.
And she thought, well, maybe I'll get in the car.
Well, fortunately, a good citizen looks at this and says, I don't like the looks of this.
Tali Shapiro was 8 years old, and it was a beautiful sunny day in September.
And this adorable little girl would skip to school each morning, carefree, loving, wearing her little white Mary Janes. And then the horror story of Tali begins.
I remember the morning was nice and warm because I wore the dress that my nanny had crocheted for me.
And a car pulls up alongside of her, and the man leans out and says, I have a beautiful picture I'd like to show you.
And I guess asked if I needed a ride to school. And I told him I didn't talk to strangers.
And he pulled up alongside of her a little further, kept trolling her.
And that's when he told me he knew my parents. And I really didn't want to get in the car, but I was raised to respect my elders. I got in the car, that's when he asked what time my school started, and then that's when he realized we had plenty of time and he was going to swing by and show me a poster. You know, I didn't know to fear people.
Well, fortunately, a good citizen looks at this and says, I don't like the looks of this. And he actually follows him to his apartment.
The moment I felt danger was when he wanted to go by his place. And I remember wanting to jump out of the car.
So the Good Samaritan, he actually followed the car to a residence where the man took the little girl out of the car and walked her inside, and that didn't look right.
And he calls the police. He says, you know, this is real hinky looking. I don't like it. There's this little girl. You know, I think you ought to check it out.
I don't remember going up to the apartment, and I don't remember anything after that.
I was driving down Sunset heading toward West Hollywood when I received a call to go see a man about a possible kidnapping. I followed him over to the location. At that time, I thought, okay, I better call in for a backup. So I went and called in and requested a backup unit. I went to the front door and started knocking. I could hear someone running around.
So the man came and he opened up the curtains a little bit and peered out and said, oh, sorry, I was in the shower. I'll be right there.
I see this male person on the other side, no clothes, not dripping with water, no towel. And I said, oh, okay, you need to open the door right now. I need to come in. And he said, wait, let me put my pants on. And I said, okay, you got 3 seconds. I probably waited 5 seconds and I kicked the door in. To the right was a dining room, to the left was a living room, and straight ahead was a kitchen. And here was this little girl, blood all over the place, clothes, shoes, and a dress thrown to one side. There was coins on the floor, and she had this steel bar across her neck, which probably weighed 2 pounds.
And there's an image that I will never forget. It's an image of this pipe used to strangle her with, essentially. Press it against her throat, and more blood than should ever be able to come out of a little 8-year-old girl next to these Mary Jane shoes on the floor of this kitchen.
I looked at her, I thought she was dead, she wasn't breathing. The other officers came around, we were looking for the suspect. I went back to check on Telly, and I just couldn't leave her there like that.
The officer had a sort of a life or death decision to make. Chase this man out the back and catch him, or render life-saving aid to the little girl and save her life. And he chose the little girl.
And as I went back in the kitchen, she started gagging, Telly. So then that put everything into high gear. But when I was yelling, the officer that was covering the back door thought I was asking for help. So he ran to the front to help me. We later found out the suspect escaped through the back door.
Telly was bleeding out, literally clinging to life. Fortunately, there was already an ambulance racing to the scene.
Tally arrived in the emergency room, and the doctor said there was no chance of saving her. And after she had been taken by the ambulance, they started looking around the apartment to see if there were any clues as to who the person was.
I found his ID. We determined he was a student at UCLA in the photography department.
And the name of the man who attended UCLA was Rodney Alcala.
They searched that house, and there are references in reports of hundreds and hundreds of photographs of young women and boys in various stages of dress, in various stages of vulnerability that were in Rodney Alcala's possession.
We had to find this Rodney Alcala. We had to get him off the street, because if he would do that to a little 8-year-old girl, there's no telling what he would do.
You know, it was just by, sheer luck that Tally didn't die. She should have died, but she didn't.
She was in a coma for 32 days. Nobody thought that she would survive, and miraculously, she pulled through.
She was able to get back on her feet after several months in the hospital.
My parents mentioned nothing. It was never brought up. It was never spoken about. I remember walking into my classroom and everyone looking at me like I was supposed to be dead.
And her parents had just had enough. They could not stay in California another minute.
They moved out of the country shortly after that. They moved to Mexico. The father wanted to give her a better, safer environment to live in.
And that's where they stayed for the next many years.
Rodney Alcala has gotten away, and now he's fled, and nobody knows where he's gone.
I was a police officer with LAPD. This was one of my very first cases, actually, and it was 4 or 5 months old at that time, and he was in the wind. I went out and interviewed a number of his professors at UCLA. One of the things they told me is, you got the wrong guy. Rod Alcala is a super guy. He wouldn't hurt a flea. Really nice guy.
Police wanted to know, who is Rodney Alcala, and why would this well-liked 25-year-old college student so viciously attack an 8-year-old little girl?
This is San Antonio, Texas, home of the Alamo.
Rodney Alcala was born Rodrigo Jacques Alcala Bucor on August 23rd, 1943 in San Antonio, Texas. He had an older brother, Raul. He had an older sister, and then he had a younger sister.
His family lived in Mexico for a while.
The grandma passed away, and the father left the family.
They ended up moving to Los Angeles area, to Monterey Park. He had everything he wanted, Alcala. He went to Catholic schools. He went to, private schools.
Everyone who knew him said he was a kind boy, a respectful boy, and highly intelligent.
Rodney Alcala had every advantage that somebody could have in life. He had a mother who loved him, which is a big deal psychologically. He had friends. He had brothers and sisters who all turned out to be very successful.
His older brother was already at West Point, so this is a pretty, patriotic family.
And then he joined the Army in the early 60s, and that's where the trouble really began for Rodney Alcala.
So Alcala didn't fare well in the Army. He went AWOL a few times, got in some trouble.
As it turns out, this bright, handsome young man with the promising future had nightmarish urges that he refused to ignore.
So 1963, he gets a pass from the military. He ultimately goes to New York. While in New York, he assaults a girl. He hits her over the head with a Coke bottle. That girl was able to run away.
He had sociopathic personality traits. He had no shame, and he didn't, feel guilty about anything that he did.
The military felt that he had a nervous breakdown. That was their analysis of it. The psychiatrists at the hospital felt it was a lot more serious than that. But he was discharged honorably, and not a blemish on his record.
So he ends up coming back to California, where he enrolls in the UCLA Fine Arts program as a photography major.
So Rodney Alcala is actually attending UCLA and living less than a mile away from Chateau Marmont when he attacks Tally Shapiro in 1968, and then seems to vanish.
I was pretty much convinced he'd gone to Mexico, because he had relatives in Mexico.
So it's been 3 years now since the rape of Tally Shapiro. The FBI eventually became interested in the case and put Rodney Alcala on the 10 most wanted list.
So I get a phone call, and it's the FBI in New Hampshire. Say, hey, we've got your guy in custody, Rodney James Alcala.
It seemed like an open and shut case, but it was just the beginning of what would become a pattern of catch and release that would continue for more than a decade. While the FBI is on the hunt for Rodney Alcala, he's actually living on the East Coast under an assumed name, John Berger.
So in 1968, John Berger walks into NYU and applies to their School of the Arts. So there he was in New York, a fugitive, now for 3 years.
What better place to be a sexual predator than go to a feeding frenzy like New York?
So New York in the early 70s is certainly, from the civic standpoint, rather challenged. It's Mayor Lindsay's second term. He's having a hard time delivering services to people. Snow removal, garbage. Police feel like they're under siege. Crime is certainly up, violent crime.
And it's during this crime wave in New York City that Alcala is able to fly under the radar, and he strikes again.
Cornelia Crilly grew up in Queens. She had 2 sisters and 2 brothers, Catholic family, very well respected in the neighborhood. They had a very happy childhood.
She was beautiful. She had long, beautiful Irish hair and Irish eyes, big smile, very friendly and funny.
A few years after high school, Cornelia met Dream Man, Leon Borstein, and they began dating.
I was 29 or 30. She was probably 23 at the time.
She wanted to become a TWA stewardess. At that time, they were known as ambassadors to the world and had a lot of prestige. And once she was accepted, she got an apartment with a couple of her stewardess friends on East 83rd Street.
In fact, in the east side of Manhattan, an area becomes known as the Girl Belt because for the first time, young women are living on their own and experiencing their careers as they never had in the past.
I had gotten a job in a Brooklyn DA's office. So in the middle of the day, I got a call from her mother saying she couldn't find her. I said, okay, when I leave, I'll go find her. I'm sure she's at the apartment.
Mrs. Crilly was trying to get in touch with her daughter, and she didn't answer the phone.
She was living in a building where I could go into the building without a key. I knocked on the door, and there was no response. That's when I called the cops. And they came over. I was at the front door when they broke into the back window. They opened the door. They told me that she had been killed.
She was down on the floor of her New York apartment. She had been strangled with nylon stockings and also had bite marks on her breast. She'd been raped and brutally murdered.
We got a call from the police department that somebody still had to identify the body. So I went over to the morgue.
The Crilly case is very unique because she had just moved in the apartment. She's a new girl. No one knew her. So that was a drawback for the detectives in the beginning.
New York PD has this brutal crime scene and no suspects.
We had almost 2,000 murders that year. It wasn't peace, love, and joy. Detectives had a lot of dead ends with this case. They had nothing, unfortunately, and the case went cold.
Well, still enrolled as a student at NYU, Rodney Alcala, a.k.a. John Berger, actually spent his summers as a counselor at an arts camp in New Hampshire.
So in August of 1971, two campers take the little dirt road down to the post office, and all of a sudden it starts pouring. They run inside the post office to get cover, and they start looking around to see what is in the post office.
And there's the good old FBI 10 Most Wanted list.
They go from one to the next to the next. Each one looks more horrible than the preceding one.
They look at this and they're like, hey, that's Mr. Berger.
So they go back to the camp and they tell the head counselor, we saw this 10 Most Wanted poster of somebody who looks like our John Berger. So he said, don't say anything to anyone and I'll go down to the post office and take a look. So he comes back, he calls the FBI, and he says, I think we have your man.
I get a phone call and it's the FBI in New Hampshire. Say, hey, we've got your guy in custody, Rodney James Alcala. I said, you've got him in custody. Fantastic.
This has been 3 years that Alcala has been on the lam and that Hodel has been looking for him.
So on the 12th of August, 1971, I, with a partner, picked him up, took him to the airport, flew him back. We got our guy. You know, he's going to prison for at least 20, 30 years. Parents didn't want Tally to testify. They said it'd be too traumatic.
So I think the big fear was, oh my God, will Alcala get away with it?
And what's dangerous in the case of a sociopath is they're very persuasive.
In 1971, Rodney Alcala is arrested in New Hampshire and brought back to L.A. to finally face charges for the rape and attempted murder of Tally Shapiro.
He was very low-key, kind of came off a bit introverted, but I could see his mind functioning. And that's what made this guy so dangerous. He was able to read people very well and stay a step or two or three ahead of them. For him, it was all a kind of a chess game.
Rodney Alcala is charged with all the crimes against Tally Shapiro, which included kidnapping, rape, child molestation, and torture.
It turns out that because Tally and her family were in Mexico, the only charge they could put on him was a plea deal for child molestation. No brutality, no bashing, no raping, no almost killing.
And they wound up giving Rodney Alcala a plea deal, where he pled to what's known as an indeterminate sentence. He had 1 year to life in California State Prison.
With an indeterminate sentence, it's sliding, it's not determined. And then the parole board has more flexibility in determining whether someone's been rehabilitated or whether they're a danger to the community. This meant that Rodney Alcala would have yearly parole reviews. And what's dangerous in the case of a sociopath is they're very persuasive.
And he's getting therapy in prison, and they believe that he has shown enough progress that in 34 months, the California Parole Board released Rodney Alcala back into the world.
Not even 3 years. Good behavior, they said. Model prisoner, they said. And he was out on the streets again.
The heartbreaking part about this is that they could have kept him, but in those days, that was an era where they believed so strongly in the power of therapy. But when it comes to fixing psychopaths, it doesn't work.
So Alcala is the luckiest man in the world. He's out on parole, and he's having the best time. He's photographing people, and he one day decides to take a ride, and he starts trolling again.
True to form, 2 months later, Rodney Alcala is caught smoking marijuana on the cliffs of Sunset Beach in Huntington Beach with a 13-year-old girl. And he was caught by park rangers.
So he gets arrested yet again. And this time, he gets 2.5 years, and he's taken to prison.
In June 1977, Rodney Alcala is released again from California State Prison, and he goes in, different parole officer this time, and he asks for permission to go on some vacations.
And the parole officer miraculously Says, sure, go ahead. So Rodney heads off to New York. July 1977 in New York was a difficult time for everyone. It was hot, it was steamy, the garbage wasn't being collected.
When you used to read the newspaper, Daily News or the Post, the first 20 pages are just violence, 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 every day.
There were a lot of murders going on, including Son of Sam.
During the time of Son of Sam in 1977, the city was afraid. Look, you had a lunatic running around shooting men and women in cars.
Police in New York are on special alert tonight for a psychopathic killer who calls himself Son of Sam.
His favorite targets, young white women with long dark hair.
During that time, Alcala is taking a lot of photographs. He walks up and down the streets and asks people if he can take their picture. Young boys, young girls, older women, doesn't matter. He just wants to take photographs. And a young woman says, sure, you can take my photograph. And they start talking and they get along. It's very nice. Her name is Ellen Hover.
Ellen was strikingly beautiful. She had long dark hair and long slender arms and legs and carried herself like a dancer.
Her father was the owner of Ciro's in Hollywood, a well-known nightclub where Sammy Davis Jr. and Dean Martin and other people appeared.
Ellen was very trusting of other people. She came from a Hollywood family, grew up in Beverly Hills, and then Great Neck, and then Manhattan. Ellen loved people.
On July 13th and 14th was the famous New York City blackout.
This is an ABC News special report.
New York City went totally dark last night, and tonight large parts of the city still are without power.
It's lawlessness. People loot, crime goes through the roof. People are afraid.
There's no refrigeration, no water, no lights on one of the hottest, steamiest nights of the year in New York City.
It was a very unsettling, hard time for most people.
On July 15th, Ellen Hover goes missing.
That evening, friends tried to get in touch with Ellen. Nobody could.
The phone rang. It was Ellen's mother, Yvonne Schwartz. Mrs. Schwartz asked me if I had heard from Ellen since the weekend, and I said no. The next thing I knew, I was watching the 11 o'clock news, and there was Ellen's picture, New York heiress missing.
And the next day, when the police showed up at her door, they looked inside, and they found on her calendar there was an entry that said she was meeting John Berger.
New York City went totally dark last night, and tonight large parts of the city still are without power.
Ellen Hover's disappearance was a huge mystery. This was a very big deal, that this socialite, this young woman who was just gone, missing.
There was nothing in her background that suggested that she would have run away.
It's in the New York Times. It's on posters. It's on the news. It's the talk of the town.
When the police showed up at her door, they looked inside.
Nothing looks like an attack happened there, but they collect evidence, mail, notes, things like that. And one of the things they take is her calendar.
And there was an entry that said she was meeting John Berger.
They research back, and they try to ID who John Berger is.
You're talking about a woman who goes missing in New York City pre-computer. And so Rodney Alcala / John Berger was never really on the radar of the New York City Police Department.
So Alcala goes back to LA, and he's there actually trying to find a job.
Rodney Alcala gets a job with the Los Angeles Times working as a typesetter.
You have to put this into perspective. On the lam for 3 years, 10 most wanted, 2 stints in jail, felon. He applies under his own name, Rodney Alcala, and he gets the job.
He actually would bring in photographs to show some of the people at his work. A lot of the photos were of nude girls. And I think it was like the time when people didn't really question it. You weren't like, oh my God, you're a pedophile. Like instead they were like, oh, he's just kind of strange. You know, he's very artsy.
So 5 months after Alcala is returned to LA, the FBI is actually able to connect the dots between Rodney Alcala, the name John Berger, and the notes found in Ellen Hover's calendar. So Rodney Alcala was eventually questioned by the FBI in relation to the disappearance of Ellen Hover, and he admitted being with her.
Where did you meet Ellen on the 15th?
He said he had taken her up to Westchester to take a picture. They had a lovely time, and that was it. Never saw her again.
I vaguely recall like dropping her off. That was it.
At that point, they still had not found a body.
Other than him admitting to the crime, saying, I killed her, there wasn't enough to arrest him.
This is Bill McCreary in North Tarrytown with a story about the discovery of the body of a millionaire's daughter missing for the past 11 months.
Ultimately, she's found. It's almost a year later. She's found up in an area by the Rockefeller estate.
They found clothing of hers nearby. They went back to the same site and they discovered her remains.
But it's all skeletal. She's identified through dental comparison.
Well, police are able to positively identify the remains of Ellen Hover. There is no forensic evidence that leads them to her killer.
1970s was considered a serial killer central.
You have the Hillside Strangler, the Night Stalker, 2 freeway killers. You have the Bedroom Basher. Elsewhere, you have Ted Bundy and John Wayne Gacy killing people in Chicago.
Recently, there's been a rash of mass murders.
1977 through 1978, many women were murdered.
Police in this era are lacking a lot of the investigative tools they have today. There's no DNA. There's no surveillance camera around every corner. People aren't walking around with a GPS in their pocket.
All of these things lead to this sort of perfect storm for Rodney Alcala, where he's able to remain one step ahead of police, and he goes on the hunt for more victims, and there's absolutely nothing to stop him.
Jill Barkham was a 19-year-old girl in New York who was adventuresome and wanted to take a trip with a friend of hers. And so she left New York for Los Angeles.
Jill and I were very close as children growing up. We were often mistaken as twins. Jill had a very free spirit about her.
Bruce was very sad when she left New York, was very scared for her, being so young at 19 years old.
So November 10th, 1977, I called home and there was crying in the background. They said, you need to come home. You need to come home. And that's all they would say.
Jill Barkham was found off of Franklin Canyon Road, and it was down the street from Marlon Brando's home at the time. She was found bent over, half naked. Her head was facing the dirt.
She has multiple ligatures on her neck. It was a brutal crime scene.
I came into a house of siblings, distraught, righteously so, and heard it from my mother directly that my sister was dead.
Her face was unrecognizable. Her brother said at the funeral that he couldn't even recognize his sister. It was so mutilated.
I had night terrors the day that Jill's body arrived. It wasn't just murder, it wasn't just rape, it was brutal, it was sadistic. And nobody could understand why the things happened to her.
They thought perhaps this could be the work of the Hillside Strangler because that's what the Hillside Strangler did. He strangled women and left them on the side of the road.
And it complicated this investigation because Jill Barkham had a friend when she got out to LA that was actually abducted and murdered by the Hillside Strangler.
In the end, the police were unable to link the murder of Jill Barkham to the Hillside Strangler, and the case just went cold. That meant the string of murders of young girls and women continued.
Georgia Wickstead was 27 years old. She was absolutely gorgeous. She was a nurse that worked for cardiac care.
She was from Los Angeles. She worked out of the Centinela Hospital and just recently moved to Malibu.
Every morning she would pick up another nurse and they would drive to the hospital together to do their shift. And one morning she didn't show up.
So the police were called to do a welfare check of her in her home. It was discovered that her window was open and the screen was removed. When the police entered her home, there was blood everywhere. Her body was completely naked and strewn on the floor, kind of posed open.
The viciousness and the sadism involved in her murder is so disturbing and so profound.
There was a handprint that was found on the brass bedding, but there was no one to match the palm print to. And again, that case went cold.
And the third person who was found dead in the same way as the other two was Charlotte Lamb.
Charlotte Lamb, in 1978, was a legal secretary living in the Santa Monica area. She had called some friends one night to go out and go dancing in Santa Monica. Her friends decided not to go. Her body was later found in El Segundo, miles away, in an apartment complex she had no connection to.
She had been strangled and she'd been brutally raped and murdered. Her arms had been folded behind her back, which made her back arch to expose her breasts. She'd been posed. It's just very disturbing and incredibly sad.
I met with Rodney 5 or 6 times. I administered assessments with regard to his sexual interests. Many times the rapist, killer, antisocial person will pose dead bodies, and they do want law enforcement and other people to see this. And there's a message in that. The message for Rodney is that I am here, you will remember me.
So instead of hiding in the shadows, Rodney Alcala is almost fearless, and he puts himself out there in perhaps the most public way possible.
Rodney going on the dating game is a great example of him being predatory, him being confident, narcissistic, and of course he wouldn't go on unless he would win.
And 5, 4, 3.
He always wins.
Factor number 1 is a successful photographer. He might find him skydiving or motorcycling. Please welcome Rodney Alcala. Please welcome Rodney Alcala.
Bachelor number 1.
Yes.
What's your best time?
Night times when it really gets good.
In retrospect, it has got to be one of the creepiest moments on TV.
He says, I always get my girl.
The so-called dating game killer is one of the country's most notorious criminals.
They told us that they had found Robin. It was devastating.
There's nothing that hurts like that. Nothing.
Her plan was to shoot Alcala. She wanted to avenge her daughter.
He was a sadistic killer who deserved death.
Model prisoner, they said, and he was out on the streets again.
A pattern of catch and release that would continue for more than a decade.
All these pictures that the police had from a serial killer. His victims are still out there.
So by 1978, the body count is piling up. Rodney Alcala has murdered at least 5 women on 2 coasts and almost murdered a little girl, and he's just about to make his primetime debut. So he actually tries out for Chuck Berry Productions and becomes a bachelor for the dating game.
He was very striking. I don't know, there was a boldness about him, and he had long black hair. He was just a striking looking person.
In terms of putting him on as a contestant, I think on the form I wrote NW, which was my symbol for no way, no darn way, is this guy going to be on the show? Because I noticed that he had a very strange personality.
It's like, are you kidding? He's so attractive. Everyone's going to love him. All the women are going to love him.
And I said, all right, we'll put him on a show, but we've got to surround him with 2 guys that have personalities and that are respectable and decent and fun.
My name is Jed Mills. When I got the job on
The dating game, they said you're going to be bachelor number 2, so you'll be sitting in the center. Bachelor number 1 is a little creepy. Notice that right away. In the green room, he jumps in. He says, I always get my girl.
Number 1, would you say hello to Cheryl, please? We're going to have a great time together, Cheryl.
Immediately did not like this guy.
And here we go.
Bachelor number 1.
Yes.
What's your best time?
One of our edicts was to make the show much sexier and much more provocative than the show in the 60s. Everything was sexy in the 70s. So we pushed the envelope.
The best time is at night. Nighttime's when it really gets good.
The sexual innuendo intrigued the audience. They loved it, and they started clapping. Yeah, they loved this guy.
Oddly enough, 42 years later, I still remember Cheryl Bradshaw. She did voices.
And she says, suppose I was auditioning you for a private class, and you're a dirty old man.
You're a dirty old man. Take it.
Come on, over here.
In retrospect, it has got to be one of the creepiest moments on TV.
The audience is beside themselves. They love this.
Cheryl Bradshaw asked about what kind of food he would be if she was going to serve him for dinner.
I'm called the banana, and I look really good.
Can you be a little more descriptive?
Peel me.
In retrospect, it sounds horrible, but at the time, we were looking for raunchy, sexy answers, and that was one. Taken in context now, oh my God.
Rodney's motives for going on the dating game are, in my opinion, part of his personality disorder. He wants a lot of attention, and he believes he should have it. He's quite bright, and he wants the world to know who he is.
When it became time for the Bachelorette to choose number 1, number 2, or number 3, she said,
Well, I like bananas, so I'll take 1.
Number 1. That's your number 1. All right. This is your date to Rodney Alcala. Rodney, come on and say hello.
She seemed very excited about seeing him. And when he came around, I would say it was a pretty lukewarm togetherness.
She called the office the next day and spoke to Ellen.
She said, Ellen, I can't go out with this guy. There's weird vibes that are coming off of him. He's very strange. I'm not comfortable. Is that going to be a problem? And of course I said no.
I would be very interested in knowing what happened in the days after when the person who chose him would not date him.
Jill Parento was a 21-year-old college student and data entry worker. She lived in an apartment by herself.
On June 13th, she went to a Dodger game and came home and was never heard from again.
The next day, she never showed up at work.
When law enforcement entered her home, she was found in her bedroom. Her body was lying next to the bed, very similar to Charlotte Lamb's, where she was laid on her back, fully naked. She had a pillow up behind her back that propped her breasts up.
So this is, again, another avoidable set of killings by this guy that should have stayed in prison. But he didn't even break stride on the continued crimes that he kept committing.
My mom's plan was to shoot Alcala.
In those days, they didn't have metal detectors, or they didn't use them, so she got into the courtroom.
She really didn't care about anything else at that point. She wanted to avenge her daughter.
In 1979, Rodney was living at his mother's house, where he had a separate entrance, and perhaps he lived there because he didn't have to pay any rent. He had taken a lot of nude photos, and he would send these photos to New York and get paid for them. They would go into pornography magazines. That's what he did. Not only was Rodney on the lam for 3 years, 10 most wanted, 34 months in prison for tally, 2.5 years in prison for a felony of giving drugs to a minor. He's out. He's free. He's on the prowl again.
On June 20th, 1979, Rodney Alcala leaves his mother's house and drives to Huntington Beach. And he starts in a place called Sunset Beach, which is a little bit north on Pacific Coast Highway, and he runs into a 17-year-old girl on roller skates named Lori Wirtz.
I was with my friend Patty, and we decided to go to Sunset Beach. We were approached by Alcala.
And he says, I'm a photographer, and hey, if you could just, skate this way, I'll take some photos.
And I said, oh, that's okay, I'll just help him out.
And there's a series of these photographs that are taken by Rodney Alcala. He was a formally trained photographer, which really played into his method of luring these women and young girls into vulnerable positions.
It's my opinion with regard to Rodney that deviant behavior is always preceded by deviant fantasy. The taking the pictures, going around looking for little girls, sizing people up.
It's a part of the constellation of the Rodney Alcala killing machine. The encounter with Lori Wirtz is very important for two different reasons. Number one, it shows that he's actually down in Huntington Beach that day, which he later denies. And it also shows that he's actively hunting for his next victim.
He was asking me all kinds of questions, like where I'm from, my name, my age. He tried really hard to get me in the car. He tried to get me in the car and leave my friend on the beach.
She doesn't bite, won't get in his car.
He started to drive away, and I did see that he was driving toward Huntington Beach.
Huntington Beach in 1979 in June was chock full of kids and sunbathers and rollerbladers and people walking on the boardwalks and just having fun.
The vibe in Huntington Beach back in the 70s was pretty easygoing. You felt safe.
Robin Samso was a 12-year-old, blonde, blue-eyed poster child for athleticism and healthy lifestyle.
I'm Robin's oldest sister. We are 2 of 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls.
Robin was the baby of the family. Her brothers, sisters, and mother all doted over Robin.
She always had a spirit about her. I mean, everybody that met her fell in love with her.
Rodney Alcala winds up on the beach talking to Bridget Wilbert and Robin Samso.
When Robin and I crossed 14th Street is when I believe he spotted us.
And what he's doing is he's saying, hey, I'm a photographer, you're beautiful, you could be a model, how about you let me take pictures?
And I was having none of it. I was like, no, no. And he reached out and put his hand on Robin's leg. And that's when I grabbed her. I said, like, no, this isn't good.
So one of the moms comes over and is like, who are you? Why are you talking to him? And he scurries off like a cockroach.
Robin had to be at a dance class at 4 o'clock, so she and Bridget went back to Bridget's house.
It was time for Robin to be going because she needed to be in the ballet studio to answer phones. That was how she paid for her ballet.
Robin
talking to on the beach.
And when I was done, I was like, that's him. That is him.
It's Rodney Alcala. I mean, you look at that and it's Rodney Alcala.
Approximately 12 days after Robin went missing, a park ranger in the Sierra Madres at a location called Chantry Flats located some human remains.
But she's been scavenged. And what that means is animals have eaten her.
During their search of the area, they also found a shoe that was identified as belonging to Robin and a beach towel.
And that's how they found this beautiful 12-year-old girl.
I remember I was laying on the couch and the doorbell rang. And I answered the door, and it was the police. They came in and they told us that they had found Robin. And my mom broke down, as well as everybody else, my brothers and I. It was devastating.
Her mother, wanted to see her daughter's body, and they had to explain to her that there is no body. There's a skull and there's bones.
My mom she was never the same. It's like her life just had this big empty hole, and everybody else was just on the outside looking in.
They arrest Rodney Alcala at his mother's house in Monterey Park.
After that, they obtained a search warrant for his mother's residence where he was living.
They get inside Rodney Alcala's residence, and they see a receipt for a self-storage facility in the city of Seattle. So in really good heads-up police work. Paperwork is not a part of the search warrant, so they cannot collect it. But it's in plain sight, so they write down the information.
One of his sisters went to visit Alcala in jail, and they started talking about the storage locker.
And Rodney Alcala is overheard saying words to the effect of, well, it's good that they don't know about the storage locker.
The cops actually overheard the conversation.
And they get inside, and they find a treasure trove of evidence. I mean, it breaks the case. They arrest Rodney Alcala, they bring him to Huntington Beach, and they interview him.
Can you show around until any homicide?
After the police interview him, he's very savvy, and he gives up very little information, and he essentially denies all wrongdoing. They get up to this storage locker in the city of Seattle.
They find thousands of pictures of young people, older people, all kinds of people in compromised positions.
They also find various forms of jewelry, a bunch of different earrings and little keepsakes. Those are trophies.
For Rodney, it's his vehicle for power and control. That's why he keeps things.
I remember them asking my mom the police department, to come and identify some things that they found at a locker in Washington.
Two of the earrings found were gold ball earrings. Robin was described as wearing those earrings on the day that she disappeared.
In 1980, Rodney Alcala was tried for the murder of Robin Samso.
One of the stories that Marianne Connolly, Robin's mom, told was that during the 1980 case, she actually showed up with a gun.
Her plan was to shoot Alcala. She really didn't care about anything else at that point. She wanted to avenge her daughter.
In those days, they didn't have metal detectors, or they didn't use them, so she got into the courtroom.
I remember she was very calm. She just kept saying, everything's gonna be okay. Everything's gonna be okay.
The trial began, and she had her hand on her purse, and she was ready to kill the man who had murdered her daughter.
I do remember her telling me that she heard Robin's voice and told her not to do it. So she had changed her mind.
On May 8th, 1980, the jury on the Robin Samso case deliberated less than 5 hours.
Rodney Alcala was convicted and sentenced to death. He was taken to San Quentin, where he was put on death row. Several years later, an appeal came up. And to everyone's shock and sorrow and horror, the case was repealed.
The verdict was overturned by the California Supreme Court because the justices determined that the jurors in the trial had been improperly informed of Alcala's prior sex crimes.
I think that there's been a gross miscarriage of justice for being found guilty of something that I didn't do.
In 1984, we learned that Alcala was getting a new trial. Once again, my mother was completely destroyed.
Just can't believe that we have to be punished for what he did. And that's really what it amounts to. We're the ones that are being punished. It means nothing to him.
In the 1986 retrial of Rodney Alcala, a new prosecutor was assigned. He was very confident in his ability to be able to get a conviction on that. 7 years to the day of Robin Samso's disappearance, the second jury convicted Rodney Alcala and also recommended that he be sentenced to die.
The second time he was found guilty, and he got the death penalty again, and we were extremely happy.
One would think that's the end. He's now going to spend the rest of his life on death row until he gets executed. Well, that wasn't the case. In 2001, Rodney's death penalty was again overturned.
At this point, it's important to remember that Rodney Alcala has been in custody ever since being accused of murdering Robin Samso in '79. He's now 58 years old, and life behind bars has taken its toll, not only on Rodney Alcala, but also on the victims' families who've been trying to achieve justice.
Twice Alcala has been convicted and sentenced to death. Twice the convictions were reversed on appeal.
The main reason was an ineffective assistance of counsel claim, meaning that Rodney's attorney had not put forth a strong enough defense on his behalf.
My mom really kind of lost it then.
Every time this happens, it's like losing Robin all over again. I don't know if you've ever lost a child, but there's nothing that hurts like that. Nothing.
Amazingly, at this point, Rodney Alcala has escaped the death penalty 2 times, and now these victims and these families are going to be turning to me and my team to ensure that he's punished for this once and for all. This case was assigned to me back in 2003 when my boss came in and essentially gave me the rundown on it and said that it was going to be a tough one.
That's when Matt Murphy decided to go back to the evidence. And he had that pouch of jewelry that was recovered in the Seattle storage locker reanalyzed for DNA.
Which meant that Rodney's DNA could be put up against the DNA that had been taken decades earlier from the people whom we all believed he had murdered. The DNA matched Charlotte Lamb, Jill Parento, Georgia Wickstead, and Jill Barkham.
At that point, Rodney Alcala is clearly now known as a serial killer.
When you get a case like this, the first thing you do is you meet with the family members, and it really drives you. And they say you see the reflection of your victim in the eyes of the people who love them.
I forget a lot of things, except the most important thing I can't forget, and that's her and how she died.
I was the same exact age as Robin Samso. We were both 12 years old in 1979, and you connect with your victim.
Matt Murphy was a young, talented, brilliant prosecutor, and the Alcala case would be his 107th homicide.
And now we're going to be in one of my courts in front of one of my judges, and I was going to do everything I could to make sure that he faced justice for what he did.
The third death penalty trial was set for 2010.
Matt Murphy and I ended up being co-counsel on the case once we brought our LA cases down to Orange County.
So we had all these really good professionals that came together.
I came to know Rodney Alcala by being on the Orange County panel of expert witnesses. I met with Rodney. We met a total of 18 hours over a number of days.
And this third time around, 66-year-old Rodney Alcala decides he'll represent himself.
He is a narcissist. He has a genius IQ measured by some. So he's very brilliant and thinks that translates into being able to be a good lawyer for himself in the case.
Alcala's choice to represent himself was a message to Mr. Murphy that he is equal to him. Mr. Alcala's perceptions about his own superiority should never ever be underestimated.
She'd been gagged with a t-shirt shoved down her mouth. I wanted the jury to see the level of violence because one of the things that we needed to prove was torture, so that we needed to prove he intended to inflict pain on these victims.
Alcala would strangle the women into unconsciousness, wait till they wake up, and then strangle them again. He knew exactly what he's doing, and he enjoyed what he was doing.
So these are the facts of the Samso case.
Because Rodney Alcala was representing himself, he got to cross-examine the witnesses, and then, of course, question Robin Samso's mom.
This is what they look like.
He was questioning my mother about the earrings, trying to create doubt. Alcala tried to argue with my mother.
All the jury sees is the man who murdered this poor woman's daughter cross-examining her.
It was so hard watching her that I think the three of us just sat there and sobbed.
Robin Samso's day in court is today. You make sure that he is held responsible for what happened to that little girl.
Murphy in his closing arguments, I mean, they were fantastic.
He got her into his car, and he drove her up to those mountains. And Rodney Alcala smashed her face in when she was still alive. He brutalized her.
He was rattled after my closing argument, because that's when he first learned, he wasn't as smart as he thought he was.
The day the verdict was read, the courtroom was very still and very quiet.
We, the jury, further find and affix the degree thereof, murder in the first degree.
The verdict was guilty on all charges, across the board, all 5 murders. The evidence that we put in for the penalty phase of the trial focused largely on his prior sexual assaults of Tally Shapiro.
When Matt reached out to me in 2010, he was pretty adamant that he really needed me to come forth and help put Alcala away.
So now we've come full circle from 68 to 79. So bringing Tally Shapiro in as the one who lived, as the one who got away, is very important for a jury to see what a monster Rodney Alcala is.
I was there for the Samso family. I've never been the victim. I've always been the survivor.
If you decide that the death penalty is appropriate punishment, you shouldn't feel too good about it.
After hearing all the evidence, the jury went back to deliberate one more time, and they came back with a verdict in a little less than 2 hours.
We, the jury, in the above entitled action, determine that the penalty to be imposed upon defendant Rodney James Alcala to be death.
I feel like Robin's life meant something, even in 12 years. She stopped him from killing anybody else. And I believe that if you would have told her that God was going to use her for this purpose, she would have been okay with it.
I just pray that I live long enough to watch him be executed. I only wish that I could be the one to administrate the injection.
In 2019, the state of California placed a moratorium on the death penalty. So that meant that all prisoners on death row, and this included Rodney Alcala, received a stay of execution. This did mean, though, that Robin Samso's mother would not see Rodney Alcala executed.
July 23rd, 2019, my mom passed away. She wanted to see that day that Alcala leaves this earth, that he just does not breathe anymore. And it's unfair. It's unfair. Somebody so cruel and evil.
Cold case investigators tonight saying they have solved 2 of New York City's most notorious murders.
New York had been investigating cases involving Rodney Alcala, a murder in 1971 and a murder in 1977.
Although Alcala is already on death row in California, he will be extradited here to go on trial for killing the 2 New York women.
They decided to charge Rodney with the 2 New York murders.
He conceded that he did kill the two women in question.
I was surprised that he pled guilty. I think ultimately he knew he was going to be convicted.
Mr. Alcala got 25 years to life, which is the highest sentence under the law.
After the trial, the Huntington Beach Police Department released hundreds of the photos that they found in that Seattle locker to the general public. Police don't know if any of the people in these pictures were victims of Alcala, but hope the public might be able to help identify them.
After the Huntington Beach Police Department released those photographs, the decades-old mystery of Christine Thornton was about to come full circle.
My son sent this email to me with all these pictures in it that the police had from a serial killer. That was her. That was definitely her. I think, having Christine being gone for so long, it was difficult because, we all knew that something bad had happened to her.
For nearly 40 years, Christine Thornton's family assumed she was dead. She just vanished out of their lives.
In '82, this herder out in the middle of nowhere comes across a pile of bones, obviously human remains.
Several initial deputies responded along with detectives, and what they found was it was a body of a 25 to 35-year-old female.
They also found the bones of an unborn child mixed in, largely all intact. The clothing was still there. Even some jewelry were all located.
They couldn't determine a cause of death. What they believed was that it was possibly a strangulation because one of the pant legs was tied in a ligature.
The detectives at that time they used the skull and sent it off to the crime lab in order to get a reconstruction of what they felt this person looked like. They determined that it was a young female and brunette.
They unfortunately weren't able to identify her, and the case went cold. In 2013, several of the detectives, including myself, were assigned specific cold cases. So this box was almost falling apart when I initially was assigned this case. There was still bone fragment and skin tissue saved at the crime lab after all those years.
If you have DNA, you run it. And then you try to find out by sending it down through CODIS and missing persons to find out if you can get a match.
CODIS refers to the Combined DNA Index System. It was created in 1998. DNA is entered into a national database, and this helps the authorities find missing people and also solve crimes.
I was basically told it was now a waiting game. I honestly thought I'd be 10, 20 years retired before I'd get a phone call saying that they'd identified her.
So in 2013, my son sent an email to me knowing that he had an aunt that he had never met. He knew the story that she went missing, and he came across this article with all these pictures in it that the police had from a serial killer.
Her son found the website that had all the pictures that they found in Alcala's locker up in Seattle.
She looked through all these photographs and kept stopping at that one photograph of beautiful brunette seated on the back of a motorcycle.
And I'm like, I think that's Chris. And sure enough, I looked at her little pinky toe, which I remember. It just was very distinctive. It curled up on her other toes, and I kind of knew that was her. That was definitely her.
At that point is when she decided to submit her DNA sample as a reference to hopefully identify Christine.
Detective Sheeman came to my office to tell me that they had a match and an identification.
Just shy of 2 years later is when I was off duty and I decided to check my email. The email I received identified my victim from Granger as Christine Ruth Thornton. So this is the copy of the photo that was found in Rodney Alcala's possession. Trying to match this photo out in the Granger Prairie seems almost impossible, but we were able to match this photograph up just based off of 2 different ridges. You can actually hold this picture up and actually show that this is almost the exact area that this photograph potentially was taken.
Cross paths and end up there.
I thought we had enough evidence to possibly charge him, but before we did that, I wanted to speak with him.
I've done hundreds and hundreds of interviews in my career, but I told myself, how the hell do you interview a serial killer?
It's 2016, 6 years after Rodney Alcala has been convicted for the murders of Robin Samso and the other women. He's 73 years old and his health is failing. He's confined to a bed at Corcoran State Prison, and that's where Wyoming officials come to confront him for the murder of Christine Thornton.
As we got in there, it was dingy-colored peach in Alcala's medical cell.
It was like something off a horror movie, paint peeling off the walls, flies buzzing around the room. It's something that I'll never forget, seeing him lying in his bed. And I remember looking at him going, this is him. I identified myself, read him his rights, and we started pulling out photographs of the original crime scene.
Now he knew why we were there.
Does this area look familiar?
Part of the area.
What do you mean by part of your area?
My name is I couldn't believe it. It's almost like it's his killing field. We also showed Rodney Alcala the picture of Christine seated on the back of his motorcycle, and it gives me chills even today to remember his reaction.
Talk to me about the picture.
What picture?
The picture that you're pointing at. What's on your mind? Talk to me. God, talk to me. Tell me about that girl.
He took his finger and he started tracing her body on the photograph. And then he started tapping on the photograph and kept doing that for a couple more minutes.
That's a guy who wants to relive it again. It empowers him, right? He would relive that.
You could see his eyes moving in his eyelids, almost like he had relived that moment. That entire moment for however long it lasted with Christine out in the desert.
Do you know her? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Do you remember taking this picture?
Yes.
Okay. Now the question is, Mr. Alcala, how did she end up dead? Did you kill her? Yes or no, sir?
When it comes to the big question, he's not going to give it to you. But we got him to admit that he was there. And we got him to admit that he knew Christine. And that's all we needed.
So Rodney Alcala was eventually charged with first-degree murder in Sweetwater County, Wyoming.
They informed me that he was not able to travel without great expense. And so I made the decision that I was not going to try to bring Alcala back to stand trial in Wyoming.
Best place for Rodney Alcala is exactly where we left him. Seeing that jail cell and that setup that he's in, he's where he needs to be.
It was disappointing that we weren't going to get a conviction on her murder, but The good thing about all of this is that this man has been brought to light as being a serial killer. His victims are still out there.
Over the years, Rodney Alcala was given multiple opportunities to disclose those victims, whether part of plea deals to avoid the death penalty, but he continuously refused to give up that information.
He has memories that he has kept secret from everyone.
That power gives him gratification, and him having the information on victims and us not knowing it, that's something he wants to take to his grave.
The shadow of deception often falls where the light of trust is most expected to shine. Beneath the surface of ordinary lives, hidden motivations can fester, transforming everyday individuals into figures capable of acts that shock the conscience and break the heart. This exploration delves into two such narratives, cases where the facade of normalcy crumbled under the weight of greed, betrayal, and the chilling capacity for calculated malice juxtaposed against the tireless dedication of those who seek truth and justice. We will examine the intricate dance of investigation, the deep wells of human psychology, and the quiet triumphs of good over evil, demonstrating that even in the darkest hours, the pursuit of clarity illuminates the path toward resolution. The gentle hum of a television, a late-night routine, the comforting presence of family. These are the elements that compose the world for Corey Richins. She, presented as a picture of grace under immense pressure, a widow finding her. Voiced through literature after the sudden passing of her husband, Eric, at the tragically young age of 39. Her book, Are You With Me?, emerged from her personal tragedy, a testament to her desire to help her 3 young sons navigate the immense grief of losing their father. This book, born from maternal love and a need for shared coping mechanisms, cast her as a beacon of resilience, a bereaved young woman seeking solace and sharing it with the world. It was a narrative that resonated deeply, garnering attention on local radio and television stations, painting a portrait of a woman embodying the struggle and quiet strength many families face. Her story was one of loss, love, and the enduring power of connection, a message of comfort that many viewers found profoundly touching. However, beneath this portrait of admirable fortitude, a far more complex and disturbing reality began to unravel. The unexpected death of Eric Richins, a vibrant, athletic 39-year-old, immediately raised questions. The Initial dispatch call captured the raw panic of a wife discovering her husband unresponsive. He is not breathing and is cold to the touch. The body worn. Camera footage depicted a frantic scene. First responders administering CPR. The rhythmic whir of the life-saving machine and the quiet, stunned observation of law enforcement attempting to comprehend the impossible. Eric's last known moments involved a celebratory drink with Corey around 9 in the evening, marking a significant financial success for her real estate business. She mentioned having a cocktail before bed and then attending to one of her sons. Experiencing night terrors, a common occurrence that would typically involve her. Waking and returning to her own bed. These seemingly ordinary details, woven into the fabric of a life cut tragically short, offered no immediate hint of the dark undercurrents that would soon surface. The assumption for many, including those closest to Eric, was that this was a sudden, unfathomable medical event. As law enforcement officials worked the scene, questions were posed, seeking any possible medical context. Lyme disease was mentioned as a potential condition, though it was not immediately clear if it was a factor in his death. Corey also mentioned Eric sometimes took a gummy to sleep, specifically a THC gummy, but expressed uncertainty about whether he had taken one that particular night. This casual mention, while perhaps seeking to offer a plausible, albeit uncertain, explanation for Eric's state, would later become a focal point of scrutiny. The absence of any history of illicit drug use, according to Corey's statements, further cemented the perception of a man struck down by fate rather than by his own choices or external interference. Eric's mother, Lisa Darden, arrived at the scene, her maternal instinct overriding the sheer disbelief. She noted Eric had looked unwell the night before, pale and complaining of chest pain. Her recounting of seeing him earlier that day and observing he looked horrible added another layer to the bewildering suddenness of his demise. The physical presentation of Eric's body also proved perplexing. During resuscitation efforts, paramedics noted an unusual amount of blood, prompting an initial hypothesis of a brain aneurysm. The unexpected nature of such an event in a healthy, athletic man like Eric seemed inconceivable, yet it served as a temporary, albeit tentative, explanation for the profound shock of his passing. The narrative of a tragic, yet natural, death was beginning to form, a comforting illusion for a family, plunged into an unimaginable abyss. However, the investigation into Eric's death was far from concluded with the initial pronouncements of an aneurysm or the processing of the scene. The county coroner's office, legally obligated to investigate any unexpected death, especially one involving a young man, would initiate a more thorough examination. An autopsy was mandated, a grim necessity that would hold the key to unlocking the true circumstances surrounding Eric Richen's end. The preliminary autopsy report delivered a blow that shattered the nascent understanding of events. Instead of natural cause, the findings pointed to drug intoxication, specifically fentanyl, as the cause of death. The quantity discovered was 5 times a lethal dosage, an amount that would incapacitate and kill almost anyone. This revelation was utterly baffling to both Eric's family and Corey. They insisted Eric did not use drugs. Corey echoed this sentiment, professing shock and confusion at the autopsy's conclusion. The presence of non-medical grade fentanyl further compounded the mystery. This wasn't a prescription overdose. With street drugs, substances of unknown origin and potency leading investigators down a path that shifted from accidental overdose to potential homicide. The investigation transformed overnight from a grieving family's sorrow into a criminal inquiry. Police obtained a search warrant for the Richen's home, meticulously combing through electronic devices and the residence itself for any trace of illicit substances or related paraphernalia. Curiously, no fentanyl was found within the home. During this period, Corey maintained her public narrative, even engaging with investigators by asking detailed questions about the toxicology report. She scrutinized specific components like acetylphenol, a marker for illicitly manufactured fentanyl, seeking understanding or perhaps planting seeds of doubt. Yet beneath the surface, unsettling information began to emerge from Eric's family. They recounted how in 2020, Eric had discovered Corey had taken out a substantial loan, $250,000, against their home without his knowledge. This act of financial deception was profound. It was the home Eric owned solely, and he was unaware of this significant encumbrance. This discovery, the family reported, was so alarming that it prompted Eric to change his trust and will specifically to ensure his children were provided for, thus creating an estate structure where Corey was largely excluded. He even consulted a divorce attorney, a stark indication of the rift this breach of trust created. While the couple reportedly attended counseling and did not separate, the damage to their marital foundation was evident. The financial strain, the deceit, and the broken trust created a complex backdrop to Eric's life and subsequently his death. The financial pressure mounted on Corey. Her real estate business, though, expanding rapidly, incurred massive debts. The Midway mansion, a multi-million dollar acquisition intended for flipping and resale became a significant financial burden, ultimately leading to its foreclosure. The weight of these millions in debt, coupled with emotional distress from Eric's death and family animosity, seemed to leave her emotionally and financially strained. This precarious situation fueled suspicion. Was the motive to escape overwhelming debt? Investigators also uncovered a pattern of alleged financial impropriety that extended beyond her personal finances. Her former best friend, Chelsea Barney, claimed Corey defrauded her out of $45,000 intended as a down payment for her first home, with the deed never being properly filed. Another family, the Wrights, alleged they discovered mold and water damage in a home they purchased from Corey, leading to illness and financial ruin after they lost their home to foreclosure. These accusations, painting a picture of financial desperation and exploitation, contributed to the growing suspicion surrounding Corey. Moreover, whispers from Eric's family spoke of prior incidents that raised red flags about Corey's intentions. During a trip to Greece in 2019, Eric, who was on medication for Lyme disease and thus unable to consume alcohol, tasted his drink and suspected it contained alcohol. He became unwell and reportedly confided in his sister, Katie, that he believed Corey had tried to poison him. While this accusation was dismissed by some as unfounded at the time, it gained a disturbing new significance when considered alongside the findings of Eric's autopsy. Then, just weeks before his death on Valentine's Day of 2022, Eric experienced what he believed was an allergic reaction after eating a sandwich prepared by Corey. He texted friends, stating, "You almost lost me this time. I think she might have poisoned me." This marked a second, chilling instance of Eric suspecting Corey of intentionally harming him. The investigation into Eric's death, initially focused on the fentanyl overdose, began to morph into a murder investigation with Corey Richins at its center. A private investigator hired by Eric's family uncovered a constant line of communication between Corey and a woman named Carmen Lauber, a former employee involved in cleaning properties. Carmen Lauber, possessing a checkered past involving drug-related offenses, became a crucial link. Confronted by law enforcement, Carmen provided a bombshell statement. Corey had asked her on 2 separate occasions to obtain fentanyl for her. She stated that Corey had remarked the first batch wasn't strong enough, indicating a deliberate intent. Carmen's testimony, driven by a plea deal to avoid severe drug and gun charges, revealed that Robert Crozier, a drug dealer, had supplied the fentanyl to Carmen. Text messages between Carmen and Corey around the time of Eric's death, particularly on Valentine's Day and the days immediately preceding Eric's death, corroborated their communication. The cumulative evidence, Eric's suspicious death-specific illnesses with allegations of poisoning, Corey's significant financial debts, her involvement in numerous failed property deals, and Carmen Lauber's testimony linking Corey to the purchase of fentanyl, painted a compelling picture for prosecutors. Corey Richens was arrested and charged with aggravated murder and possession of narcotics with intent to distribute. The woman who had so recently charmed audiences with her children's book about grief was now accused of orchestrating her husband's murder. The legal proceedings that followed revealed a complex interplay of psychological defense mechanisms and compelling prosecutorial evidence. Corey's defense team attempted to frame her actions as a grieving widow's diligent, albeit perhaps unconventional, attempt to understand her husband's death, or, alternatively, as a purely accidental overdose. They pointed to her searches for information on fentanyl as merely part of that process, human nature dictating. One would seek answers when faced with such a shocking revelation, especially after a home search warrant alerted her to the specific cause of death being investigated. They argued the prosecution lacked the forensic evidence to demonstrate how the drugs physically entered Eric's system, thereby failing to meet the burden of proof for direct administration. However, the prosecution presented a robust case, weaving together a tapestry of motive, opportunity, and complicity. They highlighted Corey's dire financial situation, claiming she owed millions to lenders and viewed Eric's death as a means to access inheritance and insurance money and a fresh start free from marital and financial burdens. They presented texts exchanged between Corey and her lover, Josh Grossman, which depicted a longing for a future together. Phrases like, "If he could just go away and you could just be here, life would be so perfect," sent less than 48 hours before Eric's death directly, challenging the narrative of a loving, grieving wife. The prosecution also presented evidence of an attempted insurance fraud charge alleging Corey took out a life insurance policy on Eric without his knowledge. The trial itself was a dramatic confrontation between starkly different narratives. The prosecution meticulously detailed the financial desperation, the clandestine affair, and Carmen Lauber's testimony linking Corey to the fentanyl purchase. Defense attorneys attempted to cast doubt on the reliability of Carmen's testimony, given her plea deal and criminal history, and Robert Crozier's contradictory statements about the type of pills he sold. They urged jurors to consider the possibility of an accidental overdose or the involvement of other parties, suggesting the prosecution's case was built on circumstantial evidence and speculation. Crucially, the defense opted to rest their case without presenting witnesses. A strategic gamble that surprised many. Corey herself waived her right to testify, a decision that left the jury to deliberate based solely on the prosecution's evidence and the defense's closing arguments. The jury, after a deliberation of under 3 hours, delivered a unanimous verdict of guilty on all counts, including aggravated murder. The psychological portrayal of Corey Richens underwent a seismic shift in the public eye, transforming from sympathetic author and widow into a convicted murderer. The outcome underscored the potent combination of financial duress, personal desperation, and alleged premeditation, demonstrating how a carefully constructed facade can crumble under the relentless scrutiny of law and evidence. In the serene landscape of Paso Robles, California, where rolling vineyards and oak-dotted hills create an idyllic tableau, the tranquility was shattered by a disappearance that struck at the heart of a peaceful community. Nancy Woodrum, a 62-year-old woman known for her warmth, her faith, and her vibrant spirit, vanished from her secluded ranch property, leaving behind a chilling tableau of unanswered questions and mounting dread. Her home, aptly named Paradise Ranch, a place she envisioned as a sanctuary and a reflection of her hopeful beliefs, became the unsettling backdrop to a crime that would test the limits of investigation and the resilience of the human spirit. Nancy was a beloved figure, a pillar of the local community renowned for her popular salon, the Strand, and her deep connections forged through faith and shared passions. Her daughter, Amanda, described a bond built on mutual respect, shared talents in hairdressing, and an unwavering belief in their faith as Jehovah's Witnesses. Nancy was a woman of deep morals who found comfort and purpose in the hope of a new paradise, a belief that guided her life and interactions. Her husband, Robert, a contractor, had helped transform the property into their dream home, which they later decided to use as a vacation rental, naming it Paradise Ranch as a nod to her spiritual aspirations. Nancy's zest for life was evident in her love for horses, nature, and an active social life, all while deeply committed to her faith. The circumstances of her disappearance were inextricably linked to a wedding weekend. A large group of guests, over 20 people, had checked into Paradise Ranch for a vineyard wedding nearby. The bride, who had found the property online, described it as a charming, picturesque venue, a perfect setting for her. Special day. Nancy, a gracious host, had personally introduced herself to the bride, offering a warm welcome and mentioning she was staying close by on the property. Little did the wedding party know that their celebration would soon be overshadowed by a chilling mystery. The first hint of alarm came on Saturday, May 5th, when Nancy failed to show up for a scheduled Bible study, an uncharacteristic absence that immediately concerned her daughter, Amanda. Concerned, Amanda asked a neighbor to check on her mother. The neighbor's discovery was ominous. Nancy's door was wide open, the television blaring, and an unsettling silence within. Upon arriving, Amanda found her mother's apartment in disarray, the familiar comforts of home now tainted by a terrifying unknown. There were bloodstains on the carpet, missing bedding, and a disturbing splatter on the walls. The sight of blood on her mother's pillow was the horrifying confirmation that something terribly wrong had occurred. Amanda's immediate reaction was panic, a frantic fear for her mother's safety as the wedding guests, oblivious to the unfolding tragedy. Unfolding mere yards away, went about their plans. Law enforcement's arrival transformed the idyllic ranch into a crime scene. Detectives surveyed Nancy's cottage, noting the lack of forced entry, a detail suggesting either a known perpetrator or sophisticated deception. Inside, Nancy's purse, car keys, and cell phone were found undisturbed. Her 2 vehicles still parked outside. The presence of blood stains on the floor, the pillow, and the headboard strongly indicated an assault. The narrative quickly shifted from a missing person to a potential abduction, a grim certainty in the minds of the investigators. The scene spoke very loudly to me. Detective Clint Cole later reflected that Nancy was assaulted inside of her bedroom and then taken somewhere against her will. Adding to the perplexing scene were scuff marks in the driveway, indicative of a struggle, and a partial handprint found on the bloody pillow, which investigators swabbed for DNA as detectives grappled with the immediate crime scene. The sheer number of wedding guests staying on the property presented a daunting challenge. A pool of over 20 potential suspects, all present during the likely time frame of Nancy's disappearance. This scenario, reminiscent of a classic whodunit, forced investigators to systematically interview each guest, sifting through alibis and discerning subtle clues from ordinary travelers. Thrust into extraordinary circumstances, the bride, sleeping in the main house, was mere walls away from Nancy's cottage, yet claimed to have heard nothing unusual, her earplugs seemingly sealing her off from the potential violence unfolding. A key piece of information emerged from the wedding guest who couldn't be fully accounted for at the rehearsal dinner. His initial evasiveness and subsequent reluctance to cooperate raised a red flag, prompting a follow-up interview at his home, although he eventually cooperated, providing photographic evidence of his attendance at the dinner and submitting a DNA sample. The initial suspicion highlighted the complex task of sifting through the actions and motivations of numerous individuals. Adding to the investigation's complexity was the information that Nancy was in the process of selling Paradise Ranch. Contractors, painters, plumbers, and other workers had access to the property, creating a wider circle of individuals to investigate. The discovery of Nancy's iPad case, strewn with notes and phone numbers, led investigators to Carlo Fuentes, a painter who had worked on the property. Fuentes initially cooperated, describing Nancy as kind and remembering her offering him tamales. However, his consistent claims of not knowing anything about Nancy's disappearance, combined with his refusal to voluntarily provide DNA, planted seeds of doubt. Investigators, unwilling to accept his placid demeanor, began surveillance on Fuentes. The investigation took a significant turn with a critical discovery from the home itself, a non-completed 911 call at 12:17 in the morning, the estimated time of Nancy's disappearance. This timestamp combined with the exhaustive efforts to identify the unknown male DNA found on the bloody pillow provided the investigative team with a vital anchor. When the lab identified the DNA as belonging to Carlo Fuentes Flores, the painter, it created a direct physical link to the crime scene. The geofencing technology employed by investigators later confirmed his phone's presence at Nancy's cottage during the critical hours. Fuentes Flores, who had previously been interviewed and cleared, was now thrust back into the spotlight, this time with concrete forensic evidence placing him at the scene of a violent crime. Fuentes Flores' background revealed a seemingly normal man, a devoted father and husband, a skilled painter with years of professional experience. Yet a deeper dive into his digital life uncovered a startling dichotomy: search histories filled with searches for cougar, pornography, and escorts, juxtaposed with his outwardly respectable persona. This indicated a secret life, a hidden proclivity that investigators theorized might provide a motive, however warped, for his actions. The detectives, acting on their suspicions, obtained a discarded bottle Fuentes had used, securing DNA that matched the sample from the bloody pillow, a decisive piece of evidence. During a subsequent interrogation, Confronted with the DNA evidence, Fuentes, Flores' demeanor shifted dramatically. He eventually confessed not to premeditated murder, but to an accidental killing. He claimed he had returned to the property late at night to retrieve equipment and while backing up his truck had inadvertently struck Nancy, who had walked up behind him. He stated he brought her inside, where she collapsed, and in his drunken state, panicked, later sexually assaulting her and suffocating her with a pillow to conceal the rape and accidental death. His narrative of accidental death and subsequent cover-up, while revealing, did not align with the investigators' suspicions. When pressed about the 911 call, he remained vague, claiming not to remember. The most profound and chilling aspect of Fuentes Flores' confession came when he agreed to lead investigators to Nancy Woodrum's body. The journey to the desolate Carrizo Plain was arduous, filled with tension and the gnawing fear that Nancy might never be found. After several false leads and hours of searching, he finally identified a specific location, a pile of rocks he had used to mark the spot. The discovery of Nancy's remains was a somber confirmation of her fate, a tragic end to the desperate search. His confession and the discovery of her body marked a critical turning point, shifting the focus from finding Nancy to understanding the full extent of Carlo Fuentes. Flores' actions and ensuring justice was served. The case, a complex blend of technological investigation, painstaking detective work, and the uncovering of hidden psychological depths, ultimately led to his conviction and a life sentence for the murder of Nancy Woodrum, a woman whose life was senselessly extinguished, leaving a profound void in the lives of her loved ones. A stark reminder of the fragility of life and the dark corners where evil can hide. The intersection of ordinary life and the abyss of criminal behavior often hinges on psychological fault lines, cracks in the foundation of trust, desire, or desperation that, when exploited or indulged, can lead to catastrophic outcomes. In the case of Corey Richins, the narrative began with a widow's compelling public persona, meticulously crafted around grief and resilience. Her book, Are You With Me?, intended to guide her children through loss, paradoxically became a platform from which her own story of deception would unfold. The sudden death of her husband, Eric, at 39, presented an initial enigma, a seemingly healthy man succumbing to a fatal fentanyl overdose. Investigators were met with a picture of shock and confusion, a widow bewildered by the autopsy results that pointed to illicit drug use, a fact vehemently denied by both Corey and Eric's family. The analysis here must pivot from immediate sympathy to a detached observation of behavior under pressure. Corey's public presentation, her interviews, her poise, her articulation of grief, while seemingly authentic, was also a masterclass in impression management. This performance, however, was soon challenged by mounting evidence of profound financial distress. Her real estate ventures, which had promised significant returns, were reportedly drowning in millions of dollars of debt. This economic precipice provided a powerful, classically recognized motive for murder: financial gain, or perhaps more accurately, financial salvation. The intricate details that emerged painted a picture of escalating desperation. Corey's alleged unauthorized line of credit against the family home discovered by Eric indicated a pattern of deception that directly contravened the principles of marital trust. The fact that Eric had begun divorce proceedings or consulted attorneys, according to family accounts, revealed the deep fissures within their relationship, suggesting the marriage was far from the picture of harmony she might have projected. This marital discord, combined with overwhelming debt, positioned Eric's death not just as a personal tragedy, but as a potential means to extricate herself from an untenable situation. The discovery of Eric's prior suspicions of poisoning, first regarding a drink in Greece and later the Valentine's Day sandwich incident, added a deeply disturbing layer of alleged premeditation. While dismissed at the time as perhaps exaggerated fears or misunderstandings, these instances, when viewed in the context of the fatal fentanyl overdose, suggested a pattern of potential malice. The psychological profile suggested an individual capable of calculating acts of self-preservation, potentially employing manipulation and deceit to achieve her goals. Her subsequent actions, promoting her grief book while simultaneously facing murder charges and engaging in alleged witness tampering, such as the walk the dog letter, pointed toward a personality that prioritized control and self-interest, even in the face of grave accusations. The trial, as it unfolded, laid bare this duality. The prosecution meticulously built a case illustrating Corey's alleged manipulation of circumstances for financial gain, leveraging her affair with Josh Grossman and the testimony of Carmen Lauber, who claimed Corey solicited fentanyl from her. Corey's defense strategy, emphasizing the lack of direct evidence of administration and the possibility of accidental overdose, fought to create reasonable doubt. Yet the sheer volume of circumstantial evidence, the financial motive, the alleged prior attempts on Eric's life, the complicity of others in procuring the drug, and the strategic presentation of evidence at trial ultimately weighed heavily. The defense's decision to rest without presenting witnesses, including Corey, herself waiving her right to testify, was a significant gamble. Psychologically, this decision might have been driven by a belief that the prosecution's case had insurmountable weaknesses, or alternatively, by a strategic calculation that her testimony might prove more damaging than beneficial. It left the jury to wrestle with the evidence presented and perhaps with their own interpretations of Corey's apparent stoicism. The guilty verdict on all counts signaled the jury's conviction that Corey Richins had indeed murdered her husband. The verdict suggested a psychological portrait of a woman who, when cornered by debt and marital unhappiness, made a deliberate choice to eliminate the obstacles in her path. Her public persona as a grieving author served as an elaborate, albeit ultimately unsuccessful, smokescreen for a calculated act of murder. The system of justice painstakingly sifting through evidence and testimony had concluded that behind the narrative of widowhood lay the perpetrator. The loss of her children, whose parental rights were terminated, served as a tragic coda to the story, a consequence of her alleged actions that underscored the devastating impact of her choices not only on her husband, but on her entire family structure. The triumph of good over evil, in this case, was the culmination of relentless investigative work and the judicial process's ability to peel back layers of deception, exposing the truth, however painful. In contrast to the intricate deception seen in the Richins case, the investigation into the disappearance and murder of Nancy Woodrum presented a different, albeit equally chilling, psychological profile. Nancy herself embodied warmth, community spirit, and unwavering faith. She was a woman, respected for her resilience, having navigated significant personal tragedies, the death of an infant son, the loss of a daughter, and the sudden passing of her husband. These adversities, rather than breaking her, seemed to forge her resolve, her faith becoming a steadfast anchor. Her disappearance from Paradise Ranch, a place named with such hope, struck a chord of profound unfairness, a stark illustration of evil intruding upon innocence. The initial chaos of the wedding weekend, with over 20 potential suspects present, initially obscured the path to identifying a perpetrator. The crime seen in Nancy's cottage, the bloodstains, the disturbed bedding, indicated a violent confrontation, suggesting an assault rather than a simple missing person case. The absence of forced entry, however, hinted at a perpetrator known to Nancy, or someone who gained access through calculated means. The detectives' intuition that something really bad had happened resonated deeply with the unfolding tragedy. The meticulous work of the investigative team, leveraging advanced techniques like geofencing, proved instrumental. The digital footprint left by Carlo. Fuentes Flores' cell phone at Nancy's cottage during the critical hours was the first major break, physically placing him at the scene when Nancy vanished. This technological breakthrough, combined with forensic DNA evidence matching his DNA to a bloody pillow, a potential weapon, created a formidable link. Fuentes Flores' initial presentation was that of a respectable tradesman, a father and husband. He was perceived as polite, courteous, and professional. However, the investigators uncovered a starkly contrasting secret life revealed. Through his search history for sexually explicit material involving older women, cougar pornography, and escorts, this duality, the seemingly normal exterior, concealing a hidden, obsessive, and potentially predatory inner world, is a hallmark of certain psychological profiles. His fixation on older women, coupled with evidence of clandestine sexual encounters, suggested a powerful, potentially aberrant sexual drive that may have been a primary motivator. His eventual confession, particularly the narrative of returning to retrieve equipment and accidentally hitting Nancy with his truck, offered a psychological defense mechanism, rationalization. By framing the death as an accident, he attempted to mitigate his culpability and avoid the full weight of his actions. However, this narrative quickly unraveled when he admitted to sexual assault and then the act of suffocation. This progression from alleged accident to rape and deliberate murder pointed to a violent sexual assault gone tragically wrong, followed by a desperate attempt to conceal the crime. The delay in confessing, the vacillation between stories, and the admission of being drunk indicated a perpetrator who initially attempted deception, but when confronted with irrefutable evidence, offered a confession, albeit one still containing self-serving elements. The profound sorrow and profound sense of violation conveyed by Nancy's family highlighted the human cost of Fuentes Flores' actions. The act of rape coupled with murder, especially one concealed by leaving Nancy's body exposed in a remote area rather than buried, speaks to a profound lack of remorse, or perhaps a dehumanization of the victim that allowed for such a brutal disposal. His subsequent request to speak to his daughter and his apology letter, while perhaps appearing contrite, can also be interpreted through a psychological lens. as attempts at personal absolution or managing his own psychological discomfort in the face of his actions. The denial of his appeal signifies the legal system's affirmation of the evidence and his guilt. The case stands as a testament to the importance of thorough investigative processes, the ethical application of emerging technologies in crime solving, and the psychological dissection required to understand motives that lie beneath seemingly ordinary lives. It underscores the triumph of justice in bringing a perpetrator to account for a senseless and violent act, offering some measure of closure to Nancy's grieving family, who will forever remember her for her strength, her faith, and her immense capacity for love, rather than the tragic circumstances of her end. In a tapestry of human experience, justice often unfolds in measured, deliberate steps, revealing truths hidden by deception and illuminated by diligent investigation. Both the saga of Corey Richins and the chilling demise of Nancy Woodrum serve as profound examinations of human psychology, motive, and the relentless pursuit of accountability. In a realm of criminal psychology, understanding the duality of individuals, the polished facade and the darker, hidden reality is paramount. Corey Richins, the grieving widow and author, presents a stark example of calculated deception. Her psychological profile suggests a highly functional narcissist or potentially a sociopath, adept at manipulating perceptions to serve her own needs, particularly financial gain. The immense pressure of debt appears to have been a catalyst, leading to decisions that escalated from financial chicanery to alleged murder. Her public persona as a sympathetic figure, coupled with her private actions suggesting premeditation and deceit, highlights the profound gap that can exist between an individual's presented self and their true motivations. The legal process in this instance meticulously unraveled her narrative, exposing the potential for immense harm. Concealed beneath a veneer of admirable resilience, the evidence suggested a conscious choice, a weighing of consequences and personal gain that ultimately led to her conviction. Conversely, Carlo Fuentes Flores' case offers insight into a different form of psychological transgression, a duality born of hidden desires and impulsive, destructive actions. His secret life centered around a fascination with older women and risky sexual behavior collided violently with Nancy Woodrum's life. While he confessed to the murder, his initial claim of accidental death points to a common defense mechanism, deflection and minimization of guilt. His subsequent admission to rape and suffocation, however, revealed the true horror. of his actions. The psychological analysis suggests a perpetrator whose underlying desires, amplified by alcohol and opportunity, led to a devastating act of sexual violence and murder. The painstaking investigative work from geofencing to DNA analysis and interrogation was crucial in stripping away his rationalizations and revealing the cold reality of his crime. In both scenarios, the investigative forces demonstrated remarkable perseverance, employing a blend of traditional detective work, psychological insight, and modern technological tools. They navigated complex human relationships, financial intricacies, and technological footprints, piecing together fragmented truths into coherent narratives. Their commitment to justice honors the victims, Eric Richins, whose life was cut short by alleged malice, and Nancy Woodrum, whose pursuit of peace was brutally interrupted. These cases serve as powerful reminders of the importance of community awareness, the need for critical observation, and the unwavering belief that truth, however elusive, can ultimately prevail. They reinforce the educational value inherent in understanding the darker aspects of human behavior, not to sensationalize, but to foster a greater societal understanding and a commitment to safety and justice. The triumph of good over evil, demonstrated through the diligent efforts of investigators and the pronouncements of the courts, offers a necessary reassurance that while darkness may lurk, the forces seeking to illuminate and bring perpetrators to account remain steadfast. The humanistic meaning lies in the honoring of victims' lives and the validation of justice, offering a form of closure and a renewed faith in the systems designed to protect us. No matter if it's a parent, a sibling, or a friend talking about loss with kids can be a tricky subject. Joining us now is author of Are You With Me, Corey Richins. And Corey, I want to start with your story. What happened in your personal life? So my husband passed away unexpectedly last year. He was 39. It completely took us all by shock. We have 3 little boys, 10, 9, and 6. And it's only been a year. How did you go from processing death to I need to write a book and help others? No, I just watched the struggle that my kids are going through and trying to find something that we could use to cope at night. Nights are the hardest. Seems like for everybody when, dealing with anything. But I just wanted some story to read to my kids at night. I was reading it, and I remember I just was in tears. And I thought, this is perfect for your family. It just seemed perfect. And so I was just baffled at how she even had the time to do that. And it's, explaining to my kid just because he's not present here with us, that doesn't mean his presence isn't here with us. And he's doing these things with us. Viewers at home, what they saw in that interview was this bereaved young woman who tragically lost her husband. Like, Dad is still here. It's just in a different way. But this would be just the beginning of the story. And boy, was there a lot more coming their way. It's a little after 3 in the morning, and Corey Richens calls 911, saying her husband, Eric, is not breathing and is cold to the touch. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Count out loud so I can hear you. I'm counting with you. 1, 2, 3, 4. Officers are dispatched to the scene. Paramedics and firefighters are all ready. There when they arrive. In those first few moments of the police body-worn camera, you are watching this life or death moment unfold. Law enforcement is trying to make sense of it all. Inside the bedroom, you can see law enforcement trying to help Eric Richens. He is on his back on the ground. He has no pulse. He's not breathing. And they're using a CPR machine so you can hear this sort of rhythmic sound. What's your first name? Let them do their work in there. That's what happened. Today. Oh no. He was just fine. He was fine. When you say we were fine, what time did you see him when he was alert? We had a drink together at 9 to celebrate something at work. Hours earlier, they were celebrating a big financial win for her real estate business. She mentions that had a cocktail before bed. She mentions that her son has night terrors and that she'd been asleep with him. When I sleep with my kids, I'll just wake up and I go back to my own bed. Where are your children now? They're asleep in that room. 2 are awake with their ears in the door. I don't want to wake them up. Please don't make me come out. At one point, the officer asked if she would like to call anybody, and she mentioned she wants to call her mom. Care you to use my phone? Uh-huh. I got a call. It was Corey. Said, Mom, you need to come up here. I said, something's happened. She said, Eric, does he have any medical conditions or anything like that? Lyme disease? So they're asking questions like, does he have any, health ailments? No heart problems or anything like that. So while she's talking to the officer, she says that sometimes he takes a gummy to sleep. But she also tells him she's not sure whether he took one that night. It's like a gummy, isn't it? Like a THC gummy? Okay. Does he have any history of illicit drug use or anything in the past year? No. As I pull in the driveway, 3 cops come running at me, asking who I am. I went running through the house to get to Corey, and it was just devastating. She was in total shock. I had no idea, not only as a mother, what to do for her, but as a person, how to help a person in shock. Oh my God. Oh my God. I went and talked to the boys, and they're just confused. They're not crying because they don't know what's going on. They just know a lot of cops are there. Corey Richland's mother, Lisa Darden, says that he got weekly allergy shots, and maybe that has something to do with his medical condition. He didn't look good. Last night, He looked pale last night, and I asked if you were okay. Yeah, but he was saying his chest was hurting. I had seen him that day, and I said, oh my God, what is wrong with you? You look horrible. For a moment, the deputy walks away from Corey Richland, and you can see a conversation between him, another officer, and an EMT. I don't know if he had a hemorrhage or something with all the blood. There's a lot of blood for no reason. A little bit coming out as soon as we start doing compressions. Okay, all right, I don't know. The amount of blood was sort of surprising to the paramedic. And this leads to the initial hypothesis of an aneurysm. My husband's active. He didn't just die in his sleep. This is insane. Eric was very athletic. You would never expect an aneurysm, but that's what they're telling us. They don't know. They're saying an aneurysm, and you just can't believe he's gone in the body. Cam footage, you actually hear Eric's sister, Katie, before you see her. No, what happened? What happened? She's moaning and she's screaming. Ow. And it's the raw, guttural pain that you hear when you just learn that someone you love has died. In the video, you see Katie take Corey and Eric's young boys upstairs and away from the turmoil. But at one point, Katie even can hardly breathe. Natural. Okay, take a deep breath. Take a deep breath. Okay. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. Oh my God, I can't breathe. I just talked to him like a couple hours ago. At 3:58 a.m., Eric Richens is officially declared dead. But it's also noted that he appears to have been dead for quite some time before. They arrived at the residence. The next thing is our detective and our medical examiner is going to respond to the location. They're going to do their investigation and document everything. And then most likely, because of his age and his health and everything else, most likely, the county coroner's office has an obligation, a legal requirement, really, to investigate forensically any unexpected death. Whenever you have a young man like this who dies mysteriously, you can bet they're going to do an autopsy. This is the night of a tragic end, but the beginning of a mystery that will take years to unravel. The night that Eric died, Corey says that they were celebrating. They were celebrating what was going to be her most ambitious purchase yet for her real estate business. A distressed mansion in Midway, Utah that she hoped to buy for millions flip it and sell it for millions more. She was so excited about it and the possibilities for it. This was a very big moment for Corey Richards. Corey grew up working for her aunt's cleaning company, cleaning the toilets of the rich people who live in mansions in Park City. Corey would dream that one day she would be the one that owned the mansions and not the one cleaning the toilets. This was Corey's moment to say, look, I did it. I made something of myself, and now I'm on the other side. Corey grew up in a family that moved a lot. My parents work construction, so we would move every 3 months growing up. We weren't poor by any stretch, but we weren't wealthy by any stretch either. My parents did what they had to do to get by. When she got to junior high, her family really made a home in Heber City, Utah. It's also part of Summit County. It's a beautiful mountain town. And there she finds a really close group of girlfriends. We just had a really good core group of friends. And I mean, the texts we'd get every weekend was, "Hey, where's the party at?" And then we also played sports. And then we were in the same classes together. And we just kind of evolved from there. She's on the cheer team. In high school, she's playing tennis. And she seems to have really found a home and belonging. She was a tough cookie. Anybody said anything wrong about us, you could kind of always count on Corey to handle it. Corey and Eric met when Corey was working at a Home Depot. Home Depot paid the best. It was brand new. It was in Park City. And it paid really well for cashiers. He was coming into the Home Depot a lot because of his stonemasonry business. And they headed off and started talking. And people remember sparks flying and instant chemistry. He was significantly older than her. She just thought the world of Eric. Eric grew up in Bountiful, Utah. Went to high school at Woods Cross. The Richens owned a cattle ranch in Summit County. And he grew up working on this ranch. His sisters rode horses. They had animals. They were outdoorsmen. Eric was one of 3 children with 2 sisters, Amy and Katie. And he was very close to his mother, who had died in 2018. Eric grew up a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, also known as the Mormon Church. His dad shares that it was one of the most important things that they wanted to instill in their children was faith and religion. So much so that Eric went on a 2-year mission for the church to Mexico City, and then came back and started his stonemasonry business. Eric was a very dynamic individual. He worked hard, but he also played hard. He had ATVs. He camped. He explored. Eric was a big-time hunter. Go to Africa, big trophy hunting stuff. They began dating. Corey became pregnant with their first child, and they married soon after. The marriage is a backyard ceremony. Family and friends gather. Corey is about to walk down the aisle, and Eric's mother presents her with a prenup, and the prenup says that his stonemasonry business belongs to him, and that the only way that she would benefit from that business would be if he were to die while they were married. Corey was pretty distraught over it, but ultimately she signed it. She loved Eric. She wanted to marry Eric. So she went along to get along, I guess. I don't think it's a secret that Eric's family, or at least parts of Eric's family, didn't approve of Corey. It was a rough start at the beginning. And once that got past, they had a good wedding. Corey and Eric ended up having 3 boys in 4 years. She planned that. She was a planner. And that was her plan. Corey was everything he'd probably want as a mom. She loved her boys. Her boys are her world. And when she wasn't working, she was with her kids. From Boy Scout leader to soccer to you name it. She's involved in everything. Eric he was a dedicated dad. He was a soccer coach for the boys. My last memory of Eric was me in their living room playing soccer with his son. And Eric was sitting in his chair, sitting back like this, giggling, while his son kicked my ass in soccer, and he was really proud of it. Eric's business has become incredibly successful. It's $1 million business, C&E Masonry. And they have a very affluent life. They're taking trips together. My first cruise was with them. They would go out to fancy restaurants. Yeah, they had money to spend. At the beginning of all, Corey stayed home with the children. But at some point, Corey wanted more, and she started a real estate business. In 2019, Corey starts Richland's Realty, which is her home flipping business. That first year, Corey bought